Gentlemen, you are both drunk on cosmic wine.
Welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Mark Sylvester.
And I'm Dr. Richard Schulman. This is Alt Psych.
Thanks again for joining us this week. As promised, we have our very special guest, Elissa Benson, who is a former therapist, an energy healer, and also a hypnotist. So welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And Dr. Schulman and I have had countless questions and ideas and thoughts on what you do. We've spoken on the show a little bit about energy healing, specifically the concepts of Reiki or acupuncture, or body therapists working concurrently with psychologists or other therapists, and just energy healing also across the board, the different forms that it comes in. Tell us about you and what you do and how you help clients heal.
Well, I work with past life trauma, both in hypnosis and in energy healing formats. The concept being that souls have experienced traumas in past lives. Those traumas can be mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. And when they occur, there's a negative energy that remains within the soul memory in the subconscious. And it affects the chakras, which are our energy centers. Either they are depleted in some way or out of balance. And the chakras are the wheels of our energy, and they need to be functioning properly. So the way I approach it is first to determine what event has actually occurred. And that information is in soul memory, in the subconscious, and not available to the conscious mind. So when I'm doing soul trauma healing, I'm actually channeling those past lives and giving the client the opportunity to be aware of the information. The next step of that process is to ask the guides how that particular event has affected the client, and then remove that negative energy, calling back the soul pieces to reintegrate them back into the body, which is what creates the healing of mind, body, and soul.
Kind of the incorporation of those various parts that have been fractured off,
Right.
usually due to a traumatic event.
Right.
Or
Pieces of the
trauma.
soul actually break off and go back to the astral plane for comfort. So that's how the chakra can be depleted.
How do you define the soul? What is your definition of it?
Well, the soul is an energy. We are energy, and energy can never be destroyed. It can only change forms.
In your view, how's the soul different from the spirit, or is it different?
I think it's semantics. I truly, that's my belief, is that soul and spirit are the same. We think of spirit as being a discarnate, and soul can be in a body. Or at least I know.
I just wanted your view of it, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
How do you determine the veracity of a past life? If you read Ian Stevenson,
Mm-hmm.
his conclusion was that most past life regressions are artifacts of the unconscious. And I've done a lot of past life stuff. I studied with Brian Weiss and did it for many years. But sometimes it felt like it was just an artifact of the unconscious. It was actually valuable no matter what. Do you have a way of telling, what's something that people are just making up in their imagination and something that is more connected?
Well, first of all, they're not making it up. I'm the one that's channeling. I'm telling them. As far as Ian Stevenson, I've read some of his work. I also studied with Brian. I believe that all this information is in the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind. So therefore it's being pulled up. It's not a figment of one's imagination. And the best way to tell is the way the client reacts. When I get a client bursting into tears as I'm explaining the vision that I'm seeing to them and they're connecting with it, I know I've hit an emotional core. And that tells me, or leads me to believe the veracity of that particular moment.
Okay, so you look at the client's reaction to what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
And we're talking primarily here about energy healing. Although I've had people react in that way in hypnosis when I do past life regression, and they'll start to cry because it hits a chord of truth.
I agree with that. Okay. So you do a lot of, how do you define soul healing then? Is it that do you lay on hands? How do you facilitate the healing?
The healing comes from the release of energy. It comes from the understanding of what happened, the connection to current life. If I see someone, just for example, someone who lived a slave life, who was restrained, constricted, and feeling hopeless in some way in a past life. And then the next vision that I might get would be someone's childhood. My guides like to bring me to somebody's childhood often, because we know in traditional therapy that childhood holds the key to how people incorporate their beliefs, their fears, their phobias, that sort of thing. So they'll show me someone's childhood, and they'll show me maybe the vision will appear as two really large parents and this tiny little child. And I get the feeling that those parents were very overbearing, very strict, constricting the emotions of the client as a child in current life. So it's a question, for me, it's a question of interpreting the visions and the feelings that I feel in relationship to the client. And then I ask the client, did you have very overbearing parents who were very strict and didn't allow you to blossom and be the person you were meant to be? And they'll say, yeah, that was exactly my childhood.
Okay. Where do you get clients from? How do you get referrals? How do people reach you?
I have a website, foreversouls.com. I also have a fan page on Facebook. I do a lot of marketing, and I do get a lot of referrals. I've been doing this for 12 years, specifically for 12 years. And so I do a lot of marketing and a lot of different kinds of keywords and whatnot for my webpage.
Was it difficult for you? Were you like a conventional therapist, and then somehow you opened into this other world?
Yeah.
And so, what was that process? How did you go from, the conventional therapy into something so different?
Well, I think it all started with Brian, to tell you the truth. When I was in graduate school, one of my classmates knew Carol Weiss, his wife. She's a LCSW, and that's the degree we were seeking, was MSW. So we wanted to pick her brain, find out how she got launched into her practice. So we invited her to a little cocktail party, and she brought Brian with her. And the only thing I knew about him at the time was that he was a psychiatrist. I knew nothing else. That particular night, he told us about the book he was about to have published, Many Lives, Many Masters. And I don't know how to explain it. It was one of those peak moments, those epiphany moments when all the hair on the back of my head stood up. And I said to myself, this is it. This is my path. This is what I'm meant to do. So in a sense, he changed my life. The problem was I couldn't do it right away. I was a widow at that time with two daughters, and I needed the salary from United Way. They had hired me to be an executive director of one of their agencies. So it was many years before I really got back to doing this work. But during the time that I was working with United Way, I started an agency. I hired a counselor. We had way too many clients for her. So I took the overload. And during that time period, I found something unusual happening. The minute the clients walked in the door, within the first few minutes of talking to them, I would get a vision of what the core issue was. And it was like I could fast track it. You know, I knew where I was going. I didn't trust it, of course, at the beginning, because you're not supposed to do that. But eventually I discovered that I had like this inner kind of knowledge. And I never really questioned it. I mean, it's not like I thought everybody had it, but I never realized that it was a gift. And so I think it was the dawning of my mediumship abilities, unknown to me at that moment. It wasn't until I began taking the course to be board certified as a hypnotist that I began to realize there was a connection there. And that was really the path, that though they were the breadcrumbs along the path to follow. So when I started doing regressions, it was awesome when people would have breakthroughs. But my process is several hours, and I can only really thoroughly cover one life. And so it began to occur to me, I need to be able to see many lives because they all kind of blend together, or they all have meaning for that individual. So that's when I came upon this soul trauma healing technique.
Did you develop it, or did you study with somebody else?
I studied with somebody else who had a process similar to what I use, but then I feel like my guides channeled me a richer process, a more comprehensive process. And so I expanded it. And then I wrote a syllabus and I teach it. So
That's great. It's amazing because Brian Weiss affected me in a similar way. I was trained by a lay hypnotist in Phoenix who kept bugging me to call Brian Weiss. Well, when I called him, you know, his secretary wouldn't let me talk to him because they thought I was just another nut job. Finally, I said, listen, I'm a licensed psychologist. I want to know how he doesn't get sued. He was on the phone like that, you know, and we talked for a while. And as luck would have it, indirectly, that's how I met Mark Sylvester.
yeah,
Did you know that, Mark?
and
I did, but I was thinking about my own Brian Weiss story, because if it weren't for Brian Weiss, I would not be married to my wife.
Well, and I wouldn't be with you, and we'd not be talking with Elissa. My God, Brian, where are you, Brian?
Where is he? No, here's the story, okay? I met this girl up in Gainesville. One of my friends picked her up, a friend girl, and said, hey, give me a call. Got her number because I was like getting over our other relationship. And I went over, and I was reading Many Lives, Many Masters at that time. Like I was right smack in the middle of the book. And I go over to her house to pick her up for our first date. And on her table, right by the front door, is Many Lives, Many Masters. But she was living with like 86 girls in this like 1-bedroom apartment. And I was like, hey, is this your book? And she said, yeah, I love this. I've been reading this. It's unlike anything I read. And the next thing I did is I just picked up the phone and I called my mom. And I said, Mom, this is the girl I'm going to marry. Like, cause I knew right there. I took that as such a powerful synchronicity. And so, yeah, let's credit Brian Weiss with that as well.
we need to write him a thank you note.
I do.
Oh, I've thanked him many times. He did a big symposium in Tampa years ago, and he invited me up introduced me to the audience, because nobody was doing that then. It was like in the early 90s. A lot of people are doing it now.
Oh, go ahead, Elissa.
I was just going to say, I would say probably 60% of the clients who come to me say, and I quote, "I just read Many Lives, Many Masters, and I had to find out what this was all about."
Yeah. And I think that's what discovering healing, well, what we're trying to do with this show is really access the collective unconscious, mostly of America, Floridians, but America, and tap into what is making people so unsettled, the exact understanding it, and more importantly, what to do about it. And that is going to involve a healing in a lot of ways. And I want to give us enough time for you to explain the concept of soul contracts, because it not only gives meaning into what's going on with the COVID era, but in everything, all your relationships, your interpersonal relationships, your intimate relationships, your relationships with your kids, employers, really, that soul contracts to me really changed my life when I was really challenged, when I was really in the dark night of the soul, really, really difficult things to integrate into the why me, why is this happening, what am I supposed to learn from this? When you're in that space, you're very clouded. And so talking about it now, I think has great power, because if you can change your thinking when you're put into a stressful position, you're better equipped and armed, and you're going to behave and react in a completely different way.
Right. I totally agree. It is change your thoughts, change your future, really. Soul contracts are the life script that we plan before we come back into body. This is the work of Dr. Michael Newton, who spent 40 years hypnotizing people and asking them primarily one question: what happened to your soul from the time it left the last body until it was reincarnated in the next? And somebody quoted me, I don't know if it's accurate, but that he'd hypnotized 7,000 people. And statistically, very few deviated from the journey the majority described. And it was a step-by-step process that the soul goes through after it transitions into the astral plane. The first step is to look at your Akashic records, the history of all of your soul's incarnations. And because we have free will, we get to evaluate the good, the bad, and the ugly in reviewing those records. Because we have free will, we take the responsibility of saying to our own self, discarnate self without a body, oh, I really screwed up in the 17th century. Look what I did. And I need to make amends for that. I need to do that over. Maybe you were a man and you left a wife and child to go take an exciting adventure journey. You just didn't want to be tied down anymore. And as a consequence of your actions, the wife and child didn't fare well, didn't have money, couldn't eat, didn't survive very long. So you're looking now back at that time period and saying, I owe a karma to those souls. And so you set for your next life this plan that you will do something to make up to them, to pay your karma. And it could be that those souls become your mother and father in your next life, and when they're in their 80s and they need you, you don't put them in a nursing home, you take care of them. You take responsibility for them in this lifetime as you did not in the last. And those are the soul contracts. And so when things happen to us in our current life, if we look at it as, why did this happen to me? I feel put upon, or I feel injured in some way, we'll stay in that space and we won't grow. But if we say, this was a plan that my soul made for my benefit, either to pay my karma, to have an experience I've never had before, or to help somebody else with their karma, it changes everything. It's like this is my purpose to go through these experiences, even if it is a dark night of the soul. And I think we're collectively going through that now as a culture.
I'll
You
give
know,
you
why
that.
COVID? Why this? Why that? Well, look at all the benefits that are coming out of that. Look at the people that are really taking apart their lives and making changes, looking at their own behavior. Families that are either working better together or that are fracturing because they needed to fracture.
Yeah.
How do you, how is the soul contract different from karma?
Well, it's a general term. Karma is part of it. The soul not only has karma, which is resolution of unresolved issues, but the soul also wants the experience of experiencing everything, every feeling, every emotion, every human behavior. Because ultimately, the soul wants to have the option to be a master guide. It's like a master guide is a spirit who has lived in body, but who has completed all their karma and had every life experience any soul could have, either in human or alien form. Okay? And they become guides to souls that are currently in body. It's like they've been there, they've done that, and they bought the t-shirt. And it's comparable to who makes the best drug and alcohol counselors? Those who have recovered themselves. So our master guides know everything. They can relate to what we're going through. And they can guide us because they can relate. So karma, it isn't just about, soul scripts aren't just about karma. They are also about helping other people with their soul path. And people come in and out of our lives to do that. And the ones that are the most significant in one way or the other, because helping somebody else doesn't necessarily mean being their best friend. Sometimes it can mean being an adjutant.
Yeah, bad.
Yeah.
So do you feel like everybody we come into contact with, like, okay, I'm a psychologist. I dealt with thousands of patients. Did I have contracts with all of them?
You might have. It's possible. I think the ones that you remember and that impact you the most are more likely to be part of your soul family or somebody you had a contract with. I mean, figure this way. Suppose you were a general, a Roman general, and you had hundreds and thousands of men in your troops that you were leading, and you led them well or you didn't lead them well. You've got thousands of people that you owe karma to.
Or, Rich, maybe you were a psychologist in your last life and you screwed up thousands of patients.
There you go.
No, it
This
wasn't.
time you're getting
No,
it.
it was Atlantis. I've seen it.
Okay. Were you playing with that fire crystal?
Well, it was probably, I didn't see that. What I saw was a healing technique that they used to kill people. I was even more ego-driven then than today, and I didn't think anybody, could, figure out how to use it. And of course, they took a healing crystal and made it into a death crystal. But I've seen the fire crystal stuff I know about, but it didn't, in my regression, I didn't see it. What I saw was a giant amethyst.
Okay.
And it was funny because I didn't know about these things and I was regressed. And then a couple of years later, I started reading about Edgar Cayce. And there was a scene in one of his readings that was very similar to what I had seen in my regression. So I took that as a confirmation,
Right.
Have you studied Edgar Cayce, by the way?
I've read a lot of Casey.
Yeah, he's terrific. I love that stuff.
Right.
I would think that you would have enjoyed it.
Yeah, fifth grade education and all that wisdom.
How can you point out to an ordinary person who doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about the spirit, the soul, God, hell, demons? Well, I guess now we're talking about demons because of
Really?
the dog.
Yes.
We have to usually figure out when we're broadcasting this, but no, it works out right. how do you teach somebody how to be intuitive, or what is intuition? What's a synchronicity? What does it look like? How do you know? Like, how do you suggest they raise their vibration through, prayer, meditation, yoga, or do you just teach them more mechanistically? Like, hey, when you're thinking about somebody and that phone rings, uh, there it is, dummy. And then they go, oh, aha, I didn't know that's what this was.
It's more like that because we are all born with intuition. It's a question of developing it, paying attention to it, or not, ignoring it. So when I'm teaching soul trauma healing, all I'm doing is reinforcing what is already there, but making it come to a conscious level within the context of their lives. I'll say something like, suppose you're off to work one morning and it's a beautiful sunny day and you get this little nudge to take your umbrella, but you don't do it because it's a beautiful sunny day. The weatherman said it's going to be sunny. I don't need an umbrella. And then by lunchtime, when you're running out to lunch, it's pouring rain. And you remember, gee, I had that thought.
Right.
Umbrella. Okay, so that thought is one of your guides giving you a warning. You're going to need that umbrella. You might want to take it. When you don't listen, there are consequences. And when you do listen, there are better outcomes. So all I'm doing is showing people that pathway. And it's their choice to decide if they want to listen or not.
We got about 2 minutes left, but one of the things I wanted to just say was that the healing, which is in what we're all seeking, is to help others through healing, but the healing that you provide
I don't provide it. The guides provide it.
Whatever. I'm crediting you, ma'am. The healing that you provide.
She's the wire, Mark.
As the conduit.
She's the wire.
To me is so amazing. It's so impactful. Like I when I compare it to what I do and pills and serious biologic mental illnesses and psychotherapy, it seems like your ability to heal through the tools that you have outweigh everything that I've been trained to do, and my own experience on top of that, and all of the tools that I have and as resources. I see your ability to shift someone's emotions and heal them as being incredibly powerful. And so I just can't understate enough the value in this therapy and the value in this treatment and the goal of a psychic shift and true healing.
Well,
So
thank you for saying that, but I really do have to underscore that isn't me. I am only a telephone, and anybody can be a telephone.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're a pretty good one, and it's important to recognize. I can tell you're really connected to source.
Yeah.
So you bring the source through you, and that means you're a clear channel, and that's incredibly valuable. And I wouldn't downplay how valuable it is, because most people are not clear enough to bring that kind of healing.
Yes, she's always a master.
I like to encourage others to believe that they can get there too if they wish.
I totally agree with you that everybody has intuitive gifts, but Michael Jordan played basketball, and I played it too, but not quite as well.
Yeah, but she actually puts her money where her mouth is and leads these soul trauma healing groups.
No, she's like Michael Jordan. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You work on yourself, whatever your karma was to come to this point in life, to bring this kind of experience to a culture that desperately needs it but doesn't want it. We run from these things like you run from a burning building, yet we really need to be connected to source. And a lot of the people who claim they're doing it really are just ego driven, and that's not a real healing.
Yeah.
I can tell by your humility when Mark gave you the compliment that you're the real deal.
Thank you.
And we are so grateful for having you on today and sharing a little bit of what you do and teaching us and the viewers about it.
I bet you've got a lot to talk about. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
I'd love to. Thank you very much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, I was going to say,
By the
we
way,
have lots of
why
content.
don't you say how people can reach you?
They can reach me on my website, foreversouls.com, or my cell, 813-417-4207, or email Elissa, ELISSA, @foreversouls.com.
Okay, very cool. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next week, we're going to have a special topic dealing with kids. So tune in for that. And until then, remember,
Be well. All right, we almost got it that time.
close.
Thank you, Elissa.